Docker work? So for that, let's first understand what are the different components that you will be having in a Docker. So basically, when you install Docker, it is all about having two components in it. So first thing is, what is that you install and handle everything? So those are called as the core components. And for your activity that you want to do some task where you run some commands, those are called as workflow components. So when you say the core components, when you install Docker, it is actually a Docker daemon which you will be installing on a machine. Okay, so that is nothing but an agent or an engine which will be actually doing all the process that we need. So if you say you are installing Docker, basically what you install is a Docker daemon or a Docker engine. That is the one which will be running on a particular machine where you have installed. Okay, and that's the one which will be trying to do the task whatever that we have. Then Docker client. What do you mean by Docker client? So Docker client is the utility through which we will be connecting and giving the specifications to the Docker daemon. So Docker daemon on the background, it will be taking care of all the processing, and whatever that now we connect and the commands that we use, that is called as the Docker client. So basically, Docker client will be taking the input from us and it will be giving it to the Docker daemon and process it accordingly. Okay, so those are the two parts. Then the next thing is you will be having the workflow components. So in the workflow components now, if you say that you want to work, it's all about creating different kinds of containers. So that is what the Docker is going to do. In which, what exactly is a Docker container? A Docker container is nothing but, you can consider it as an empty box or a particular content of an image is what you'll be having. Because now logically, if you think, you cannot have an empty box. Okay, as of now, to understand, I was saying you can consider it as a box, but in terms of a machine, you cannot create a container empty. But basically, when you create a container, it is not going to have anything. But as in the concept, when you create a container, it is the location where you will be putting some specific operating system's image, and top of that you will be working. So that is a separate space for you in the current host machine. So that way a container has to have an image along with it. So that is how, when you say that you are going to create a container, you need to specify what image that you are going to put inside it. So that is how container is represented as the runtime instance create from the image. So based on that, you will be saying what is that you are going to do inside and how separately it will be treated. And basically, when you are working on Docker, it's all about starting a container, stopping a container, or restarting it so that whatever that you have inside, you will be able to access it. And in that way, what do you mean by a Docker image, which you will be putting inside a container? So a Docker image is nothing but a template which will be having a particular set of environment and some applications in it. So environment means it will be having first the bootable file system of a particular operating system, and then on top of that you will be having specific files on which you will be working. So that is how, when you create a container, you will be saying what image you want to use, so that inside the container that specific image will be put, in which you will be having a specific operating system's bootable file system, using which you will be treating it as a separate operating system and then work on it. Okay, so that's how container and images are closely coupled together. So now for a container that I'm creating, I can choose what kind of image I want to put inside it. Based on that, the container will be treated as a separate operating system. So if I put Ubuntu's based image, then it will be treated as a Ubuntu container, because the common term is container, but if you go inside the container, it will be treated as a Ubuntu operating system. Same way, if I create a container and inside that if I put a CentOS image, then that container will be treated as a CentOS machine. Okay, so that's how you put a image inside a container, and based on that you will be working on it as a separate machine. Then now in Docker it's all about creating the containers and putting some image, but if you see, we can create our own image if it is needed. So that is how you can replicate everything. That I'll be talking about it later. But now when you say that you are going to create all the containers, where are these containers going to be stored? So these containers are going to be stored in the Docker daemon or the Docker engine. In the same way, we will be having different kind of images. So specifically for Ubuntu, you might be having many things, or for CentOS. So where are we going to store all these images? As well as if I need, we can create our own image. So these things will be stored in a place called registry. So a Docker registry is nothing but a location where we will be storing all the Docker images. Okay. And there are two types of registry. One is public and the other one is private. So by default, if you are trying to create a container, you need some image to work, right? So you can use the Docker's open source community and they will be having a specific registry from which we can download whatever the standard image which Docker gives and we can use for creating machines. So that way, if you are using those open source related images, then it is called as a public repository where everyone can access. But if you are creating an image specifically for our organization, we cannot put everything into the open source. So that is when whatever registry that we are going to create and maintain will be called as a private registry where we can use it only within the organization. Okay. Then there is one more term called as Docker file, where just now I said if we want, I can create my own image and I can use only that. So that way, if you are trying to create your own image, you can do some steps manually. If not, it's always better to automate that also. So that is how we have one more concept called as Docker file, in which it is going to act like a script where if you want to create an image, you tell that all the details and that Docker file will be helping us to create an image specifically. So that's how we will be using this Docker image generation using this Docker file. So like this, these are the components that we have majorly in Docker. So using all of this, we'll be doing some regular activities.